I mean, my voice is kind of naturally just kind of not very loud and strong, but my voice kind of turned into like it was like fighting for air. And like someone was sitting on my chest all the time. I could barely just push words out without it being a lot of effort. And so that was where I was for weeks. And we went to therapy every week. As we started talking more outside of therapy, it became his opportunity to say some of the most unkind things to me about how he felt about me and us and the predicament. And because I was so numb, and because I understood that he was unhappy and that I loved him, I would hear and listen to him say these things, and I would just listen and validate what he was saying and just tell him, if you're not happy, as hard as this is for me, like, if you don't want to continue with our relationship, it's okay. It's not what I want, but I don't want you to be unhappy in a relationship with me, just like I don't want to be unhappy in a relationship. And I didn't know this. I didn't know that you were unhappy, and I wish you would have told me. You didn't have to cheat. Like, I showed him so much kindness and empathy, and I wasn't angry at him. Anger wasn't something that I was able to show for quite a long time. I just was numb and just sad that I felt bad that he felt like he couldn't have been honest with me about what he was feeling inside, and it appeared to be a major issue for him, this idea that he couldn't be honest with his feelings or about his feelings. And I felt pity for him, and I started thinking about how hard that must have been, and because I was under the impression that he was feeling this way because of things that I didn't do well, like make enough money or always cook. And these were nonsensical things because they were things that don't cause someone to cheat and neglect. But for some reason I was hearing that it was due to his feeling like he couldn't be himself. But I didn't feel like it was my fault, but I did feel like he was blaming me. And that was hard because I had always been pretty articulate about my feelings and open, and I thought that he was too. So I was surprised to hear that he had these feelings inside of him, and resentment and frustration and all of these different things that, if and when he did feel those feelings, we would talk about it. It wasn't, peaches and cream all the time. It was a relationship, and there were times when he didn't like decisions I made, and there were times when I didn't like decisions he made, or I didn't like the way he spoke to me, or the way he was moody, and so that was, we did talk about those things. It just, he didn't, none of the things that he had mentioned after the marriage had elevated, in my eyes, to a situation where we would be able to talk about it and address it. It was all just under the surface and hidden. So that was the beginning of our journey in therapy. And it was the beginning of the stage in our relationship where I saw a lack of empathy, a lack of care for how his words were affecting me. It was like a dump. It was just, this is how I'm feeling. This is how I'm feeling. I got to get it off my chest. And the times when he would be concerned about things, it was almost because, it seemed to be because I wasn't reacting the way he wanted me to react. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't questioning why. I was just accepting of what he was saying and, accepting that that's how he felt and that those feelings were valid. And there'd be times where he would just be like, well, how does it feel? Like, how does it feel how does it feel? And I didn't understand why and what he meant by how does it feel? Like, how does what feel? And he seemed to be really concerned with how I was feeling when he said the things he was saying to me. And so I would respond to him and say, well, it's hard to hear. It's painful to hear, but, it's not easy to listen to you say these things. But, it hurts. But I'd rather you tell me the truth than lie to me. And that would be my response often. And then finally I just said, well, why do you ask me? Why are you asking me how I feel? Because it seems so misplaced. Like, the question didn't, like, who does that? And he said to me, well, because you're sitting there like we're at a restaurant and ordering breakfast, and they just told us that they ran out of pancakes and they only have waffles, and that's how your reaction is. And I sat there and I was just like, So I'm sitting here giving him a platform, listening to him, validating him, and he's critiquing me on how I'm receiving very difficult information. And he seems to be frustrated that it's not upsetting me more. And that was another clue to me that maybe I was dealing with something mental. Because it didn't seem reasonable for me for him to even to feel comfortable enough to question my responses when his behavior had been so out of line, when his emotional detachment had been so rapid and his anger had been so misplaced. It didn't feel right that he got to dump on me and then ask me how it felt, only to say, well, that response doesn't seem normal, as if any of what was happening, anything that was happening was normal in any sense. And so I asked him, I said, are you expecting me to have a different response? Like, I'm just, this hurts. I don't, but what do you want me to do? You want me, like, I'm not going to beg you to stay. I'm not going to beg you to, like, I want you to be happy. I want to be happy. I was happy, but if you're not, there's nothing I can do with that. If you feel like you're in love with someone else and you want to be with someone else, I can't compete with that, and I don't want to. And whenever I would say something like that, I would notice it would be this hook. And that hook would be, well, something to the effect of like, we've been together for a long time. I can't imagine my life without you. I could see myself being with you, but I just wonder if, we're just going to eventually get to a place where we divorce or break up. And, I could see myself having kids with you, but, and so that was the beginning of like basically you're pushing me away. And then when I'm like, I'll stay away, thank you, you're free to go, he pulled me back in because he'd realized, oh, okay, she's actually going to be okay with leaving. And so he'd say something that would allude to a future that he knew I wanted. Children, a happy marriage, companionship. And he would pull that back in with layers of, we've been together for so long, we get along so well, sprinkled with, but I could never be myself, and I wonder if I could ever be happy. And so it was this like confusing mix of messages that really spoke to what he was experiencing inside, on top of, whatever type of other things he was dealing with. But he would always do that whenever I would be like, okay, well, I understand. The thing is, I never begged for this. I never asked him why he felt that way. I did ask him why he married me. I did ask him why this went on so long, if this was how he felt. But I did not ask him why he was polyamorous, why he felt the need to deceive women. I did ask him that, actually, but I didn't ask him why he wanted the things he wanted. I felt like wants and needs are very personal, and they're just that. They're needs and wants, and they don't need to be justified. They just need to be accepted or not. And so I was accepting them without judgment, but I felt this like tinge of judgment. And when I asked him about that, did you want me, or, did you expect me to have another response or another type of reaction? Because of course I'm still not crying. I'm still just quite numb, and I'm in shock. I was later diagnosed with PTSD, and I was just trying to survive. I was just trying to, it was hard enough just to get through the day alive. And I wasn't feeling suicidal. That's not what I meant. But I just would have rather not have woken up so that I wouldn't have to feel the hole inside of my heart. And this waking up to a reality that was unlike anything I'd ever imagined for myself, especially after having enough time to get to know someone and to think that I was making a decision that made sense and was right. But he did wind up saying to me that, no, I don't have I'm not expecting anything. And there was another little sign that he can't admit disappointment, or, oh no, I wasn't expecting anything. I just wanted to say your response was a little odd or whatever. And that was that. And that was how the majority of our conversations went for, I would say, that was month 1, maybe the first 6 weeks. And I didn't start breaking down and feeling real emotions, like really raw emotions, until about 6 or 7 weeks in to this nightmare. And maybe my body, my mind was telling me to stay safe, because maybe I knew that I wasn't in a safe environment, and that as soon as those emotions were present from me, that they would be pounced on. And a little foreshadowing of the future.